evening, everyone, and welcome to the final lecture of Online UWC 2014. The speaker is Polly Akhurst, who works for the UWC International Office in London, where we both are, which I think is quite relevant for what Polly's going to talk about. Yeah, as I said, she works as the Alumni Relations Officer for UWC, and so she gets to meet and work with alumni all over the world. And Polly's also been involved as a mentor, so it's been really great to have her on board. Yeah, I think, well, without further ado, I'll pass over to you, Polly, to talk about your movement called Talk to Me. Yeah, so over to you.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, everyone, and it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here today. I already spoke to the group in Asia Pacific earlier today, and that was fantastic, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope that this session will be just as enjoyable. And I am looking forward to hearing many of your questions and comments at the end. So I think Robin has done a good job of introducing me. I am Polly, and I work at the UWC International Office here in London. But today I'm going to talk about a project that I have been involved with for several years outside my work. And the project is called Talk to Me. And I'm going to explain a bit more about it in a second. But the idea is that hopefully, through telling my story of kind of working through the project and successes and failures and all that kind of thing, it should provide you some really useful kind of hints and advice for your own project, which I know that you've been working on a bit and will be continuing to work on. So it's supposed to be both a kind of like practical and a bit of an inspirational session as well. So I will get started. So Talk to Me. What is the idea? So Talk to Me is an idea that my friend and I came up with 3 years ago now, so quite a while ago. And it's based on the fact that we like talking to people that we don't know. And so, yeah, both me and my friend, we tend to talk to people in, you know, in cafes, on the bus, on the tube, in the London Underground, in the kind of most unlikely places. And I found that the conversations that I've had have generally, you know, most part of them have been very, very positive. And, you know, I've made new friends, I've made new potential kind of like business connections even. And sometimes I've just had, you know, sometimes just talking to someone I don't know has cheered up my day. But we both live in London, which is a city where people don't tend to talk to people they don't know. And so, you know, it's seen as a taboo almost to talk to someone that you don't know, and it's very, very evident when you're on, for example, London Transport, on the London Underground. Everyone is silent. And so we kind of thought, you know, that it was weird that people didn't talk more and don't talk more, because we could see all these benefits to talking that we had seen in our own lives. And so that's where the idea came for trying to create a social movement that would encourage people to talk to each other in London. So making it easier for people to feel free to talk to people that they don't know. So as I mentioned, this was 3 years ago now, and at that time, it was just around the time, it was a few months before the London Olympics in 2012. And so we thought, oh my gosh, this is the perfect time to try to get people to talk to each other when the world is coming to London. And, you know, we can kind of show how friendly Londoners are and welcome everyone, and we can have Londoners and tourists of the Olympics all talking together. So we decided, we kind of thought a bit about what we wanted to do and what would be something that would get people talking. And we decided that a lot of the problem around people not talking to each other is that they didn't know how the other person would respond. So we came up with this idea of a badge, which I'm actually wearing right now. I don't know if you can see it. It's just here. And the badge says "Talk to Me" on it. And so it shows that you're kind of open to conversation, want to talk to others. So we thought, hey, we'll go with this badge, and we're going to give out loads and loads of badges all over London. And we thought that we would focus on the London Underground because, as I was saying before, it's kind of a place that's renowned. It's very, very well known for people not talking. So that was our big plan. And then we started talking to loads of people about this. So we spoke to the Mayor of London's office. We spoke to Transport for London, who basically own all the transport systems here. We talked to big London newspapers. We talked to communications companies, all that kind of thing. And we were really excited. And a lot of those people were really excited as well. And we were kind of convinced that it was going to be amazing, basically. So what happened? Well, it didn't happen. You could say that we failed. So there was no campaign around the Olympics doing this kind of thing. We didn't give out any badges. It kind of passed us by, basically. So why did that happen? At the time, we kept saying, oh, it's because, we hadn't planned enough in advance, which was part of the reason. And it was a big thing that we were trying to do. But that's the thing. We kind of wanted it to be big. We wanted the whole thing to be big, but we hadn't trialed it, or we didn't have much of a plan beyond giving out the badges. And we thought it could actually be quite a lot more than that. And so that kind of failure, even though it was really, really hard, it really taught us to learn and to reflect. And so our main learning was that we had to trial our concept. We had to start small and be very realistic about the change that we were trying to make. So, that said, I'm going to tell you what we then did. So, this is what we did next. We decided that in line with this idea of trialing these different concepts and seeing how they worked out, that we would try to get strangers talking in one specific area of London. And so we basically focused on holding a week in a very specific area where we would do lots of things to get people talking. So one of the things that we did was handing out our trademark badges. You'll notice that you can see them in the left-hand corner. And those badges are a bit different to the ones that I've shown you now because we've changed them. We handed out loads of badges during the week to see if people would wear them and to, they were important as a visual identity, basically, for people who wanted to get involved. And then we also held events that brought together different groups in the community. So the photo you can see there is of a cooking class where we got lots of people involved from different groups. And we also did a pub quiz where traditionally people go with their friends to a quiz and they all take part. But we mixed up the teams so that they would talk to people who didn't know it. People would talk to others they didn't know. The other thing that we did was kind of focusing on public art and doing things in the public space. So the bottom two photos that you see on there, they're quite small, so you might not be able to see very well, but we did some work at bus stops because they are places that basically a whole variety of people use. And when people get to bus stops, they often have to wait for the bus. So it's the perfect opportunity to have a conversation. So we played around with the bus stops and tried to turn them into talk stops, which were places where people could talk. And so that one of the left bottom photos shows a bus stop sign that we put on underneath the normal bus stop sign, which gives other kind of, instead of destinations, it gives topics of conversation. So we had weather, holiday plans, meaning of life. And that kind of helped to get people's attention, and people were a bit like, what's going on? And then the other thing that we did is we placed we got a woman to sleep on top of a bus stop, or to pretend to sleep on top of a bus stop, and that's what you can see in that bottom right photo there. And you can see that bus coming by and everyone looking. And so again, that was something where we wanted to surprise people and really kind of get people talking. And actually, that was really successful. We had loads of people standing around the bus stop saying, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that homelessness was so bad in London. That people have to sleep on top of bus stops." So yeah, so those are a few things that we did during the week, and we gained a lot of attention for what we were doing. And so one of the pictures there shows that we were featured in Londonist, which is a very prominent magazine. We were featured in some other places as well, in Time Out, which is another magazine. So we did get attention for what we were doing. So the best thing about kind of trialing that is that we learned so much. and from kind of putting these ideas into action, we'd learned through doing it on a small scale, we could learn very easily. And so we kind of had some key findings from that project, which were that we needed the badge. The badge was great, but we also needed more things to support it. We needed, events and stunts and to do things in the public place to really get people talking. The badge wasn't quite enough. It was great to have, but not enough. And then we also found that it was easier to engage people in public spaces, people where they already were, basically, like at the bus stop, than from getting them to go to separate events. We did learn that people really did want to talk and responded well to the idea. So it was great in that sense in showing, yes, this idea reaches people, it has some kind of validity. But on the other hand, it was very hard to keep doing all of those activities for a week. So given those kinds of findings, we still wanted to do this big London-wide day, but we fed what we'd learned from our pilot into the planning for that day. And so we decided that we would definitely do, a day instead of a week. A week was too long. And one thing that we wanted to do was, building from the kind of attention that we got during the week, we hope to get kind of more media coverage in order to raise awareness of the importance of talking around the city. So this idea that it wouldn't just be stunts and events that we were encouraging people to come across and attend, but we would try to reach out to all Londoners and make them really aware of the importance of talking and that this was going on. And then also that we would use public space as much as possible, and that we would partner with more organisations who could help us reach people that we might not be able to reach otherwise. So all of this fed into our plans for Talk to Me Day. And Talk to Me Day we held actually just a few months ago. And I'll talk more about the kind of timeline and planning and stuff in a bit, but we were planning for this for quite a while. So Talk to Me Day was the world's first day to celebrate the importance of talking to others. And we held 15 events and activities in London which involved over 1,500 people. And so we did all sorts of things. So we, continuing on the theme of public space and using public space, we took over a street in London. Actually, it's somewhere in very central London, and we called it Talk Street. And we had lots of volunteers who were giving out badges, who were starting up conversations, encouraging people to come in and talk to each other. And that worked very, very well. And we also did an event in collaboration with a theatre here in London, which was all about breaking down barriers to talking through drama, which worked fantastically. And they managed to reach out to loads of people that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So again, feeding in that learning from what we had done before. And of course we were giving out the badge. And we also organised a whole range of picnics, socials. You can see that in the top right photo, people kind of gathering in certain places and just with the idea of talking. And on the day as well, we were featured in national media. You can see below there's an article from The Guardian, which is one of the big newspapers in the UK. And there was really a kind of debate that was going on about talking and the importance of talking that we had really hoped to create. So we were successful in what we set out to achieve in that, and in incorporating all of our learnings from what we'd done before into the project. And we're really, really happy with how it went. But also something unexpected happened, which was that we kind of went international. And so originally we were saying that this is Talk to Me London Day. But after we had quite a lot of interest from international press and newspapers who were writing to us, you can see a newspaper there, the Globe and Mail, which is Canadian, but we got quite a lot of press coverage, which led to people writing to us and saying, oh my gosh, in my city it's the same. People don't talk to each other. I like this idea. What can I do? And so we had 9 events in different cities around the world on the day. And that was from San Francisco, New York, there was one in Paris, there was one in, you can see Seoul, and even one in Ukraine as well. which kind of, yeah, lent it a real kind of global aspect. And then we changed the name of the day to Talk to Me Day to incorporate everything that was going on. And now what we've done is kind of incorporated that, you know, that global aspect and the global desire of people to get involved. And we're looking at a new strategy whereby we can support people in cities to run Talk to Me style groups and to really help us become a kind of a truly people-driven movement, basically, which in a funny way, I mean, is what we wanted to do in the first place. But you can kind of see how from, you know, the actual, what the kind of London-wide campaign turned into is very different to what we had originally conceived, the way of actually doing it. But actually, in the end, we think that we are achieving the same kinds of things, if not kind of better, because hopefully they will be truly, you know, we want this to become really people-owned and very sustainable as well. So that's a kind of a bit of my story, basically. And now I want to talk about some kind of key learnings for all of you guys, basically, in terms of things that, you know, that I wish I had known were I in your position. And I've obviously been doing this for quite a while, and I've kind of shared the story, but I've just wanted to draw out some of the key things that I learned from this whole process. There are more, but these are the kind of main ones for me, definitely. So in project management as such, they often talk about kind of 3 different things that all feed into each other, and that's planning, executing, and evaluating. So planning is obviously kind of thinking about how you're going to do something, all of the kind of thought that goes in behind it, the strategy, all of that. Executing is the actual doing of something, and then evaluating is seeing how it's gone and kind of looking at kind of at what worked and what didn't, all that kind of thing. So what I want to emphasize is that these 3 things are all really linked, and you know, and they all kind of feed into each other, and it's a bit like a cycle. And in some ways, you're never really finished unless you decide to finish the project altogether. So, for example, right now we have finished. A few months ago, we did Talk to Me Day. That was the executing bit. We're now evaluating. We've been evaluating what we did for the day, and that feeds back into our planning process. And the second thing that I want to kind of emphasize is that you will spend more time planning than executing, but that's okay. When I'm talking about the thing, I'm saying, well, we did a day or we did a week, but the amount of time that we spend planning for that, it's several months, basically. And it's really, really important through good planning, you can get the executing part right. If you don't plan well, it probably won't go well. So it's okay to spend a lot of time planning, is the learning. And then the third thing is to think big. So, you know, a lot of projects, organizations all tend to talk about vision and mission and asking these big questions about kind of firstly, what the changes that you want to see. And for us, that's definitely a world in which it feels normal for people to talk to each other, both kind of in small villages and in large cities as well, and where individuals are empowered to connect and communicate. And we've also thought about, you know, this question of, you know, how are we going to do this? And we're still working on this, but, you know, at the moment we would say that we're trying to use conversation to create connections and bring about a cultural shift in people's attitudes towards others. Another good question to ask yourself is, who will benefit from this change? And so, for example, we think that everyone can benefit from talking, but then we might break those kind of people down into different groups. You know, for example, people who do already talk and people who don't. And there are other key questions that you will want to ask, which are, you know, who is already doing this? Are there other organizations or other projects already going on like this? And how, if so, how is your project different to that? And that's something that we're also asking at the moment. So there are a lot of big questions that it's important to think about when you're starting out, and to really kind of try to define what you're doing, and that's absolutely invaluable. and it's a constant journey, and those answers are not, the answers that I have here, for example, are not definitive in any way. They might change in the next few months as we think about them, or the next year or the next 2 years or whatever. It's a continually fluid, but it's important to kind of know what you're working from. So it's great to think big, but at the same time it will work if you act small. So thinking big but acting small. So looking at, from going from the big things, the vision and mission and that kind of thing, to thinking about what activities you can actually do to make this change happen, and what is, feasible given resource constraints in terms of time, money, all those kinds of things. And this is kind of what I was talking about a bit earlier in terms of, us trying to do something really, really big at the beginning, but not having narrowed down enough on our activities, or being aware of what we could do at a smaller level to make the change happen. And obviously, I think it's a case in which once you've acted small, you can go back to the big thing again, which I'll talk about in the kind of following point. But yeah, so keeping those two things in mind, think big, act small. One other element to think about, the third point there, is kind of who do you need to work with to make it happen. And that's thinking a bit more about your team and the people who are involved. How many people do you need? What skills do they bring? And also outside of that, who will it be useful to partner with in terms of what you're doing? And it might be, in your case for your projects, it might be your school, it might be another not-for-profit, it might be a local council. But thinking about how you can leverage all of those kind of different people around you to make that happen really helps you to kind of get to act small and to think more deeply about what you're doing. So the fourth point, trial your idea. And so I think I've emphasized this quite a lot throughout the presentation so far, when I'm talking about our trial and doing the things that we did in Southeast London, and that allowing us to see what really what worked and to learn what didn't as well. And so yeah, you can see this dog there, which has no idea what it's doing in the photo, and that's kind of a bit like what we were like when we were starting out. We didn't quite know what to do, and we had to find our feet and find what worked. And that's kind of what a trial gives you permission almost to not know what you're doing and to find out, that you can then take on when you do something bigger. And that's also linked to it being able to kind of give you credibility. People like to hear about the experience that you've had in doing something, and in making both, either in that being successful or failures from that, and things that you have learned from those failures. So basically, trialing your idea will really, really help. So in your case with your project, that might be, instead of deciding to run your project in many schools in the area, it might be just doing the project in one school and then thinking of widening it out to other schools as well. So that's trialing your idea. And then something that I've also touched on is this idea of failure and success. And I said that what we're doing initially, the campaign on the Underground that we had kind of planned in time for the Olympics, failed essentially. But then that was very, very valuable in allowing us to adapt. So that failure then kind of has since led to success. So people often talk about those two things as if they are very, very separate, and you either fail or you succeed, and it isn't quite like that. The thing is that what you should be looking to do is using whatever happens as a kind of learning curve. So whether that's failure or success, and essentially the most important part is to adapt to whatever happens. So so for example, even success, you could say that we adapted to loads of people wanting to Talk to Me in their own cities, which then led to us changing the name and the focus of the day from Talk to Me London Day to Talk to Me Day. So whatever happens, basically adapt. And that's interesting when you're thinking about your journey. And then the final thing is perseverance. And so this is essential to making anything work. It's basically having the will to kind of to keep on going with it. It's not always going to be easy. Often setting up anything new or trying to create any change, even if it's very, very small, is very hard. And so, but perseverance, if you are able to stick with your idea and, you know, and carry out the project, then it will be hard, but it will bring huge satisfaction in terms of really seeing something that you have created coming about. And as I mentioned, that might be very different, you know, it might be very different to the way that you thought it was going to be, but that's all kind of part of the journey, really. And I think that's kind of what I want to end on now, is that a lot of the kind of the real satisfaction in doing anything, in doing any project initiative, comes from the journey that you take to kind of to get to that point. It's not about the final kind of achievement, and in many cases there is an ongoing, there is no final achievement. You're going to want to keep on going with whatever you're doing, and that's why in some ways you kind of have to get joy from the journey and in the progress that you're making. And that was even something that I kind of discovered when I was writing this presentation, and I was looking back and I was thinking, oh wow, yeah, this is a good journey. This is, you know, and so I found that I have derived satisfaction in just reflecting on all of it. I think that that's something to really kind of remember throughout as well, and thinking, you know, this it's not always going to be fun, but just the journey itself should be satisfying. So I think that's enough of me talking. I've talked for quite a while. Just some final things. I have given my contact details here. So my email address, where you can feel free to contact me, obviously after the questions here. You can feel free to contact me at any time if you want any further advice about your projects that you're doing. And then you can find out more about Talk to Me at www.talktomeday.org as well. And then I've just put in a few final articles at the end on some of the kind of key points that I was talking about. So an article about failure and why failure is good for success. And then one about, which is actually taken from Google, which is about 8 pillars of innovation, so ways to be innovative. And they've stolen some stuff from me, or rather, I've stolen some stuff from Google about that. So you'll see a few similarities there. So yeah, I think that is it from me, but I am very much looking forward to any questions that you might have, and I will unshare my screen now so you can actually see me.
I just want to thank you very much, Polly. Well, for all of you who haven't, I hope you've now been inspired to put your projects on the Our Common Future website, ocf.co/projects, because that should help make your projects, help with that planning and feedback process, and you can comment and give feedback on anyone else's projects, and it's a really nice way to present it as well. And that'll also come in really useful for the group sessions tomorrow.